Welcome back to the Global Business Report here on Arise News. In Nigeria, 8 power distribution companies' operational licenses are likely to be withdrawn by the federal government. Now, the country's Electricity Regulatory Commission, or NERC, has accused the DISCOs of breaching the Electric Power Sector Reform Act. And now the accused firms are Abuja Electricity Distribution Company PLC, Benin Electricity Distribution Company, Enugu Electricity Distribution, Ikeja Electric PLC, Kaduna Electricity Distribution, Kano Electric, Port Harcourt Electricity, and Yola Electricity Distribution Company as well. And joining me from our Abuja studio to discuss this development is energy expert Nextier Consulting, Ogbonna Onwumere. Ogbonna, it's good to have you with us. But before we start off with the lineup of questions, I'd like your thoughts on this. 8 distribution companies is a lot. What's the implication to the power sector? Is government finally taking the bull by the horn in correcting the ills of the sector?
Right. As you know, there have been several complaints about liquidity problems in the power sector and about how the distribution companies have not remitted the amounts due to the market from the customers. And it's good to see that the regulator is finally stepping up and is finally taking action towards maybe closing this liquidity gap. But we know that the distribution companies have complained a lot about tariffs, the cost reflectiveness of the tariffs. And they've said, that we're getting this tariffs from the customers, and the money that we get from them is not enough to run our own operations and also to expand our assets. And so basically they have kicked back several times and said, we can't remit the amount that is required of us to the market. So it's good to see that that the regulator is taking action finally and trying to cop that. As to how this would impact the markets in the long term, I imagine that this will cause the distribution companies to sit up. Personally, I feel that if the distribution companies find that they're unable to run the business or to run their franchise areas effectively, then they might as well declare force majeure, because it means that the requirements given to them by the regulator and by the government to run the sector are not favorable for them. So, yeah.
A wake-up call indeed, Ogbonna. Now, what's your assessment of the declining supply of power over the last 3 months?
The decline that we're seeing is the first we've seen in the last 3-4 years. The last time we saw power statistics drop in the third quarter of a year was in 2015. Between 2016 and 2018, we've seen that power generation and transmission statistics have gone higher in the third quarter. So this brings a bit of it's a reason for us to question what exactly is going on. We cannot say for sure, because assessments are being done as we speak at the firm. But we think it could be as a result of demand dropping at this time of the year. There's a chance that people are not using the high energy consuming appliances. Example, the ACs, considering that the weather has been better or quite cool in recent time. So these are some of the things that we could consider to be the reason that we're seeing a drop now in generation.
Indeed. Now, can you explain what the Vice President's office meant by constrained electricity, and why does it appear to have been generated yet unable to put it to use?
Oh, well, when you say constrained generation, really what you mean is unutilized generation capacity. So basically, to put this into perspective for you, consider like a farmer. A farmer has his farm land. He has maybe very big space to produce crops. But if he doesn't have the right amount of seeds or the large quantities of seeds to farm in these areas, on this land, then that's a constraint there. That's a constraint on supply of the seeds. So that's the kind of constraint that the power sector faces with gas, for example. you find that generation companies have the ability, the capacity rather, to generate some amount of energy, but because of gas supply challenges in the country, they are restricted, or rather, or constrained, as the word is used in technical terms. So these constraints could be gas constraints, they could be transmission constraints, in which case we're saying that the generation companies are able to generate the required or the nominated capacity for that day. But because of issues with transmission, or the transmission system or the distribution system, the generation companies are unable to evacuate that much capacity. So this is really what the constraints mean. Not that the energy is generated and stored somewhere or generated and thrown away. No, it's just that because of the constraints, they're unable to generate the capacity that they can reach on a daily basis.
Very good, Ogbonna, but I'd like to take you on the issue of transmission and distribution. Which is the biggest challenge rather, for the Nigerian power sector?
Well, there's still lots of debates around which is the biggest issue. To go a bit over the supply chain, the value chain, power delivery starts from generation, right? So it generates, the generation companies generate electricity, and then they deliver electricity through transmission infrastructure to the distribution companies or distribution franchise areas. And then distribution companies take it from there and distribute. Now, the reason that we cannot have the distribution company evacuate up to the maximum capacity that it claims to have, which is about 8,000 megawatts of power, is because the the distribution infrastructure is not strong enough to take that much energy, right? So what this means is, if we're going to approach the problems of power delivery in the power sector, we need to start from the bottom of the chain, which is the distribution end. That way we can focus on allowing or enabling the distribution companies to take in all the power that could be generated from the transmission company. Again, like the farmer analogy I gave earlier, if you don't have the right roads between linking the farmers' farms to the marketplaces, then the farmer will simply not be able to convey his produce to the consumers. So basically, it's the same thing. That's where transmission comes in, and you need to fix distribution, then transmission before we talk about generation. So yeah, it's a bit dicey because we don't even know. We're not exactly sure the capacity of each of the distribution companies as we speak.
All right, very good, Ogbonna. Now, talking about the proposed Norway-Nigeria partnership and the expansion of the country's power sector, what's the demographic prospect of the power alternative, and how can it be deployed?
Well, as you know, there have not been any official statements made as to how this is going to proceed or progress, rather. We don't know now that there is any commitment from either government on moving forward with these discussions. But we do know that that discussions were held around the possibility of increasing Nigeria's power generation capacity rather, and using the hydroelectric means. Norway is a country with very good generation numbers. The 99% of their generation is from hydroelectricity, and so there are possibilities that they may be looking to invest or to assist the Nigerian government in fully harnessing the hydroelectric generation space. Now, there are 17 dams in Nigeria, 17 known dams and reserves in Nigeria. Of the 17, it's just 3 that are being used today for power generation. So there's a chance that this kind of arrangement and discussion relationship between the two governments will try to optimize that space and to see how they could maybe make more dams in the country function and contribute to power generation.
Very good. There seems to be a heavy reliance on hydroelectric power source here. So what other cheaper alternative sources of power should Nigeria be looking into?
We've seen in a report released by Bloomberg New Energy Finance that wind and solar energy generation have become the cheapest in the world among the top countries, the advanced countries. So perhaps it's an area that we in Nigeria, or the Nigerian government, should consider, especially considering that the GIS map shows that Nigeria and many other African countries can harness up to 1,600 kilowatts hour of power from the sun. And just to give you an idea, again, what this means, the average R2 customer, residential customer in Nigeria, consumes about 300 kilowatt hour. So if we can harness up to 1,600 kilowatt hour per square meter in this part of the world, then absolutely it's something we should definitely consider for generation. It's going to be cheap. It might be difficult to set up at the initial stage, but it will be cheaper in the long run.
Briefly, and in 30 seconds, your thoughts on the topic of developing nuclear energy. Do you think this is imperative or a mere conversation here? Quickly.
Right. Okay, imperative, I wouldn't say, but it's an option definitely, because nuclear energy is one of the most potent ways to generate electricity in the world today. We've seen in studies that 1 kilogram of nuclear energy, of nuclear fuel, which is uranium, is able to generate as much power as 15,000 kilograms of coal and 10,000 kilograms, if you could do the conversions, of oil. So, and that alone could give you about 45,000 megawatt hour of electricity. So it is definitely an option to consider.
All right, so Ogbonna Onwumere, many thanks for your thoughts on those issues.